You have been told that farming was the moment humans finally got it right, the dawn of civilization, the end of the daily fight for food. The bones buried under those first villages say something else. In 1987, biologist Jared Diamond wrote a short essay with a brutal title. He called farming the worst mistake in the history of the human race. That was not a clumsy line. He meant it literally. To see why, go back 12,000 years to the Fertile Crescent, a strip of land curving through modern Iraq, Syria, and Israel. The people there, the Natufians, settled down before they ever farmed. They cut wild wheat and barley with stone sickles. Then someone noticed. Dropped seeds grew right where they fell. Within a few thousand years, 8 crops were tamed. Emmer wheat, einkorn, barley, lentils, chickpeas, peas, vetch, and flax. Goats came first around 10,000 years ago, then sheep, pigs, and cattle. On paper, this looks like an obvious upgrade. More calories per field, food you can store, villages that grow. The problem showed up in the bodies of the farmers themselves. Start with a site in Illinois called Dickson Mounds. Archaeologists found 2 groups buried in the same ground, foragers from before maize farming and farmers from after. Anthropologist George R. Melagos compared their bones directly. The farmers had 7 times more cavities in their teeth, 4 times more anemia from iron-poor grain diets. Their life expectancy fell from about 26 years to 19. Same place, same people, worse health after farming. Now crossed to Abu Hureyra in Syria. Anthropologist Thea Mollison studied the skeletons of the women there. Their toes, knees, and lower backs were deformed. They had knelt for hours every day to grind grain, pushing a stone back and forth across a slab. The grinding reshaped their bones before age 30. Across the early farming world, the same pattern repeats. Farmers were shorter than the foragers before them, weaker, sicker, with worn joints and rotten teeth. If farming made life better, the skeletons do not show it. So why did anyone keep doing it? Why trade a healthy life for a harder one? The answer is that nobody chose to. Farming did one thing better than foraging. It fed more babies. A forager mother carried her child until it could walk. She spaced her babies about 4 years apart. A farming mother had soft porridge to wean infants early. She could have a new baby every 2 years. More children lived, and the population climbed. That extra growth is what locked them in. More mouths needed more food, which needed more farming. More farming fed even more mouths. Within a few generations, there were too many people to feed by hunting. Going back would mean watching most of them starve. No single generation decided to farm forever. Each one just had a few more children than the last, and the only way to feed them was more wheat. Living packed together brought a problem foragers rarely faced. Most major infectious diseases came from domesticated animals. Measles and tuberculosis crossed over from cattle. Influenza came from pigs and ducks. Smallpox from livestock too. Foragers moved too often and lived too thinly for epidemics. Farmers stayed put, beside their animals and their waste. Their wells filled with sewage, their grain drew rats. A village of a few hundred became a permanent home for plagues. Remember the promise that farming meant less struggle. The work went the other direction entirely. Modern foragers, like the Hadza, spend about 17 hours a week on food. Early farmers worked from sunrise to dark, plowing, planting, weeding, hauling water, guarding the fields, then threshing, grinding, and storing everything they grew. The reward for all that labor was a duller, narrower diet. A forager ate dozens of wild plants and animals. A farmer ate mostly one crop and starved when it failed. One bad harvest could empty an entire village. Grain changed human power in a way meat never could. A hunted antelope rots in 2 days. A sack of wheat keeps for years. Anything you can store, someone else can count. Anything you can count, someone else can tax. For the first time, humans made a surplus. A few people took control of that surplus. They did not farm. They owned what others farmed. Stored grain created something foragers almost never had, a gap between those who owned food and those who grew it. From that gap came landlords, tax collectors, and kings. Soldiers to guard the granaries, scribes to track the debts. The oldest writing we have is not poetry, it is accounting. Lists of grain, oil, and cattle. Clay tablets from Mesopotamia, counting who owed what. There is one discovery that flips the whole story around. In 1994, archaeologist Klaus Schmidt dug into a hill in southern Turkey. The site is called Göbekli Tepe. He found giant stone pillars carved with foxes, snakes, and vultures. Some weighed 10 tons and stand 5 meters tall. They were raised about 11,500 years ago. That is before pottery, before writing, before the wheel. Built by people who had not yet started farming. Hundreds of workers had to be fed in one place to raise it. Some archaeologists think the temple came first, that feeding the builders is what pushed people toward farming. If they are right, we did not farm and then build gods. We built gods, and farming was the price of keeping them. Whatever the trigger, the spread could not be stopped. Farming began on its own in at least 7 regions. The Fertile Crescent, China, Mesoamerica, the Andes, and more. Each one bred more people who needed more land. Farmers pushed into forager land and never stopped. Around 12,000 years ago, maybe 5 million humans were alive, all of them foragers, spread thin across every continent. Today, there are 8 billion of us. Almost every calorie feeding them comes from farming. A few grasses now cover the planet. Wheat, rice, and corn feed most of humanity. Those grasses spread everywhere by making us tend them. Picture a farmer's day 9,000 years ago in Çatalhöyük, a town of mud brick houses so tight there were no streets. People walked across the rooftops and climbed down ladders inside. You wake before dawn with aching knees. You grind grain until your hands blister. You work the fields under the sun all day. You sleep above the buried bones of your ancestors. They never went back to the open life their grandparents knew. And neither did anyone who came after them. The trap was never one bad decision. It was a slow ratchet that turned only one way. 8 billion people now stand on the far side of that single seed, planted on purpose by someone who had no idea what it would cost.